Hello and welcome back to Suspended Fanimation. I'm your host, Dennis Batholkis, and this is Watchmen, Season 1, Episode 4. If you don't like my story, write your own. So that's pretty much what Damon Lindelof is telling all of us. If we don't like his story, we can go write our own, because this has become the ultimate fanfic, is what I realize this has finally become. Uh, that's really the only way I can see it. It's kind of like Watchmen Babies or something like to that effect. That's the only thing I can liken it to. And it's easier for me to digest it that way, and I've come to grips with it in that term. So before I get started, sorry I'm on a little bit earlier. People's Choice Awards screwed up everything. They didn't tell me that Mr. Robot was going to be on 2 hours earlier. So the timing is off on everything. So I had to do Watchmen first. I'm going to watch Mr. Robot right after this, and then do Mr. Robot at 9:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So yeah, it went all ass backwards on that one because of People's Choice Awards and nobody telling anybody anything about this. So before I start, let me get some business out of the way first. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, like, share, and subscribe. If you want to know when I'll be on live again next, it's a 50-50 chance of you actually getting notified by this, but you can hit the bell down below, and the bell should actually notify you when I'm on live again next. That's actually YouTube setting. And sorry if you're seeing flashing of lights and stuff like that. The TV is on, and that's because Mr. Robot's going to be on next right after that, and I really don't want to miss it and have to set everything on up. So that's the reason why that's flashing. Normally I don't have the TV on when I'm doing this, so sorry. Also, if you want to know when I'm gonna be on live again next, you can take a look at my my schedule up on my webpage, suspendedfanimation.com. It's also mirrored on my Facebook page. It's also where I change things out to and all that stuff. I also have a Facebook group page where you guys can post stuff and chat. And then I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, and I have a Patreon page, but no tier set up as of yet. That will happen at the end of this year, beginning of next year. All right, let's get started, shall we? Because we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Spoiler alert, I am going to spoil the shit out of the episode. If you have not seen the episode, go and watch it. Come on back. This will be a video. You can comment down below in the comments section. Thank you, Viking Bitch, for the brand new paddle. All right. So we start off with a woman selling eggs at the side of the road and having no luck. And Islands in the Stream is playing. It's the Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers song from the 80s, 1982 to be exact. And the couple are going through their day basically as Island in the Stream are playing. They go to bed, and as soon as they get into bed, the doorbell rings. They go downstairs, they open the door, and she asks them if they're, who they, if they're the people that she thinks they are. And they go, well, you're Lady Trieu. And she goes, yes. And she says, can I come in and talk to you for a moment? So she sets up a little hourglass and says, you are now the most important people in the world, and you have 3 minutes of my time. And she starts it off, and basically she says, what do you know about me? And that she's a trillionaire and that she's building the clock down the road. And she goes, well, it's much more than a clock, is what she says. And she goes, but I want to buy your house and all the land that's on, that it's on, 40 acres of it to be exact. And of course, they don't want to sell because it's been in the family and all this stuff. And she goes, well, you're the last. You don't have any children. You basically are extinct after you are gone. She goes, but I'm not going to offer you money for your house. She goes, I'm offering you a child. Your child is what she says. I know you've been to the fertility clinic and didn't work, our fertility clinic. And she goes, I think that's bullshit. She says, Piggy gets upset and wants her to leave, of course. And she goes, I don't know. I think you misunderstood me. I'm not going to make a baby for you. I am going to give you a baby that we've already made. It's biologically your son. And I'm also going to give you $5 million. So, you can buy baby food and set up a new life and college and all that kind of stuff. And she goes, and you have 30 seconds to decide. She goes, because if you don't take it, I'm just going to destroy the baby. She goes, no, just joking. She goes, I'll find it a good home, but they'll never know where they came from. And she ends up, they end up signing, of course. And just as they sign, the lights start flickering. They go outside, and we see this thing coming down out of the sky and crashes into the field. And they're like, "What's that?" And she goes, "I don't know, but it's mine," because it's crashed into her, now her field, because that's where she lives, or that's where she's bought this whole thing. And we zoom over the field, and we see it start changing and building up, and we see what it is currently, which is, downtown Tulsa and all of this. And we see Sister Night, of course, or Angela, going into her store and cleaning up, and then she's going to burn Will's, old note that she's got, when the phone rings and a message is left from the Greenwood Cultural Center saying that there is a new um, family member that's been found. And as she's paying attention to the answering machine, she accidentally lights the note on fire and burns it up. So she's lost a piece of evidence at this point. So she goes outside the Greenwood Cultural Center, dressed as Sister Night, and calls it in and says, "Hey, has anyone broken in? Has there been word of an alarm and all that stuff?" And they're like, "Nope, nothing here." She goes, "All right, I'm going to check it out. Just wanted to call in and find out about it." And then she breaks in and sets off the alarm. And she gets something called an acorn, using her own name, of course, and not Will's this time, and goes into the ancestry room and pops it in. And this does a holographic image of your ancestors, where they came from. And of course, now that Will has submitted his DNA, not voluntarily, of course, there's a new tree that has branched off on her tree with Will. And she sees him as a little boy, and bends down to talk to him and goes, "You know what? Yeah, you came into my life to blow it up 100 years later, and leave me the fuck alone." And that's when her car falls from the sky, and we leave off where we left off in the last episode. Yeah, I know, Penn. It was a little bit of a workaround. Sorry about that. So, um, and she sees her great grandparents at this point too, and finds out all about her great grandfather, and that Will had disappeared basically as a child and all that stuff. And like I said, her car fell from the sky. We see Lori outside laughing, and Sister Night's behind her, and Lori draws her gun on her. And then she sees her. She goes, "Oh, what the hell?" And we see Angela, turns off her alarm with her phone, of course. And she says it's her car. And she goes, "Well, is there anything missing?" And she goes, "No, it doesn't look like it." And Lori tells her, "Well, it fell from the sky." And she goes, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, it fell from the sky." So Angela ends up going in to check on the kids, and one of the girls is taking her spot in her bed. So she ends up crashing in Lucas or Topher's room. And her and Topher talk about what happened at the funeral, about the guy getting shot in the head and all that kind of stuff. And he's a very weird little boy. So I don't know what's going on there. Yeah. So Cal, in the meantime, they're talking in the morning, and, you know, he's still kind of confused about what's going on a little bit. But then the kids start arguing about uh, where their soul would have gone if they had blown up, because Topher was telling them that it wouldn't have gone to heaven. And Cal sets them straight and goes, "Well, your soul doesn't go anywhere. There's no such thing. It's basically, Uncle Judd. Before he was Uncle Judd, he was nowhere. Then he was born. He was a baby. He was a teenager. He was an adult. And then he died. Now he's nowhere again," kind of thing. And it's just kind of matter of factly. And I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting in a TV show to kind of present that. That was interesting. Um, yeah. So Angela, of course, goes and visits Wade at his house. So we get to see him without his mask. And of course, his house is a bunker. And he has photos from the last squid rain. And she basically wants Wade's ex to find out what Will's pills are, because Will's pills were sitting inside inside her car. That's the only thing that was left in there. So Angela also says, Judd was a racist. And he goes, "Oh, well, he was a white man in Ohio," is what, in Oklahoma, excuse me, is what he tells her. She goes, "No." She goes, "He had this in his closet." And she pulls out the Klan uniform. She goes, "Do you mind keeping this here so the FBI lady doesn't find it?" And he, of course, agrees to that, which is, I can already see this as being a setup at this point. So Sister Night, she dresses up as Sister Night, goes and grabs a duffel bag, and she drops it off a bridge into an open bed of a train that's passing by underneath. And then she looks up and sees this guy in a silver suit with a face covering, looks like a superhero, I guess, if you will, with a utility belt and everything. And she yells at him and goes, "Hey," and he starts taking off running. A little skinny guy, and he's running and she's chasing after him. And we see him pull some bottles out of his utility belt and just start spraying himself with it and dropping the bottles. Then he takes off the belt and goes sliding, literally jumps on his back and slides and goes right into a sewer drain. Just slides right in. And she's like, "What the fuck was that?" Which obviously I don't think that's going to be anything. So it's just another misdirect from the mystery box is what I'm pretty much thinking at this point. So Sister Knight runs into Senator Keene Jr. there. She's at the precinct, and he says he knows who she really is and then thanks her for saving his life. And she runs into Red Scare and Pirate Jenny and asks if they ever heard of the, Lube Man. And of course, they're like, was he wearing a Rorschach mask? No, if he's not 7th Cavalry, who gives a shit? And probably the new boss lady doesn't give a shit either. And of course, it is Lori who's sitting in Judd's office at this point. And she tells Angela to come on in. And she goes, "You know what? We found Will's fingerprints in his car. He's an ex-NYPD officer. And he's probably about a little over 100 years old." And she goes, "You know what? Over 100-year-old people probably are in wheelchairs, kind of like what we found near Judd's body." And that's when PD comes in. Agent PD comes in, and he's got another clue. And he whispers it in Lori's ear, and they're like, "Okay, we found another clue. You're just in time. We're going to go and check that one out too." So they're all together in the car, and they're taking off. And of course, Lori is pushing Angela's buttons, telling her, you know what kind of people wear masks? People who are hiding their pain. And she goes, "No, I'm hiding my face so my family doesn't get killed." And she goes, "Yeah, that's exactly it, hiding your pain." And she goes, "I used to dress up and run around and that kind of stuff too." And she goes, "You? And what kind of pain were you hiding?" And that's when she goes, "Hey, Petey, why don't you tell her what kind of pain I was hiding?" And she goes, "Petey knows everything." And so he basically tells Angela that who Lori's parents were, and that her dad raped her mom, and that's how she came to be. Yeah. And they end up at the Millennium Clock Tower there. Oh, and there's another thing that was talked about. Miracles were actually what was it? Coincidences are thermodynamic miracles, is what Dr. Manhattan used to tell Lori. So that's what she calls them. Yeah. So they see this flying vehicle, and Lori asks the technician, what's the range on it? How many of them are there? There's only 6 of them, a prototype. And of course, they could probably lift up a car, drop it someplace in, downtown Tulsa. And she wants a list of the pilots. And the technician says, "I don't have that authorization." And that is when we meet Beyond, which is Lady Trieu's daughter. And she says, "We can give you a list of those pilots. And Lady Trieu wants to have tea with you. She up in the atrium, if you can come by, here with us. But it's ladies only." So PD says, "You know what? I'm going to go wait out in the car, because that's what's going to happen with him." So Lady Trieu, of course, gives them the list of the pilots. And then she goes, "There was an old ancient Vietnamese proverb that about death," is what she says. And then she says in Vietnamese to Sister Knight that your grandfather wants to ask if you got the pills. And Sister Knight goes, "Oh, that's an interesting one. Have you heard of this one?" And she goes, "Tell that old fucker to leave me the fuck alone." And I like Lady Trieu's response. She goes, "I've never heard that one," which was actually a pretty good thing there. And that's when Lori notices that she has a statue of Veidt, but of Adrian Veidt, dressed as Ozymandias, but he's old. And she goes, "Why is he old?" And Lady Trieu says, "Because he is old." And then she goes, "And in my culture, we revere our elders." So she kind of covers it up that way. She says a truth with a lie to kind of cover it, or not even a lie, basically. Just she says the truth, and then covers it up by saying we revere our elders. Which just gives me, pause to say, okay, we already know that she's a clone. Adrian Veidt's clone. We'll get to this too near the end here. So, recap and then review is what I'm doing here. So we see Adrian, of course, harvesting 2 more clones from the river, puts them into a chamber which accelerates their growth. And he's eating cake as they are screaming and all that stuff and playing music. And we see them grown naked, and he pulls them out, dresses them, brings them in and says, you'll be able to talk in a little bit and you'll have full function. He goes, I feel sorry for you because I wasn't the one that built you, is what he says. If I had, you'd be a lot better than what you are. And he brings them into the dining room, and we see all the clones have been killed. I mean, stabbed, butchered, whatnot, just all over the place. He says, sorry about the mess. Last night was a very bad night, is what he says. Yeah. And so he says, okay, let's grab all the bodies. And he takes them outside to a trebuchet and ends up launching the bodies into the sky. And as we see the bodies get, flying out into the sky, they disappear. And he goes, huh. And he basically laments that they are only there to be tools for him at this point. Ed Brewer, I'll get to that in just a minute. Let me finish up here. So he ends up saying that basically he's going to use them as tools, and that he was sent there for 4 years ago. That at first he thought it was a paradise, but now he knows it's a prison and needs to escape it at this point. He's looking for a way to escape. And then we see him looking again through his telescope, and as the telescope pulls away, we see the moon, and we go back to Tulsa. And I'm kind of wondering if he is trapped on the moon somehow, some way, from someone. So Angela comes home to Cal reading a book, and she ruins the ending for him because she's trying to pick a fight with him because he didn't tell her that he spoke to the FBI lady. And she asks him what she wanted, what he told her, and he tells her everything and says he didn't tell. And I told her that your grandfather was the one that killed Judd and strung him up. And she goes, you didn't tell her that. And he goes, no, I didn't. He goes, I'm not that stupid, of course. And then she goes, well, she also asks, she knows that we met in Vietnam. And she goes, did you tell her about your accident? Which again might be a red herring in this. So he goes, no, that didn't come up. And then he says to her, I think, Lori is here to help you, kind of thing. So Beyond wakes up, I guess you can say. She has something in her arm, and she pulls, this line from her arm, and she's, kind of frightened. And she goes to Lady Trieu and tells her that she had a nightmare about men coming to the village and taking her and walking them through for a long time, and that her feet still hurt. And she asks Lady Trieu if she'll walk her back to bed. And she goes, no, you go on your own. And that's when Beyond tells, Will Reeves goodnight, because he's there talking to Lady Trieu, and who's pissed at him and basically says, why don't you tell your daughter who you are and why are you going through all these games? And she goes, and he says, I could say the same about you. And she goes, well, I need to know if you're in. And he goes, well, when's this going to happen? She says, in 3 days. We don't know what this is they're talking about. And he says, well, in 3 days, Angela will know that I betrayed her and she'll hate me for it. And then you'll know that I'm in all the way. And then he turns to her and says, tick tock, tick tock. And they both look up, and we just pan up to the clock tower out through the windows, which I don't know if they're looking up at the moon to see that Adrian Veidt's out there or what. So, Ed Brewer says, it sounds like you're liking it. Maybe I should give it more of a chance. So I'm not really liking it, Ed. It's that I've tolerated it now at this point. I've considered it fanfic at this point, and it's not Watchmen. It's something else completely different. It is not Watchmen. It is using Watchmen, but in a weird way. So for me, it's not Watchmen as far as I'm concerned. It's something else. I'll see what happens. It's only got 5 more episodes left, I think. I think it's supposed to have 9 episodes. So we'll see where it goes from there. And also you can kind of tell where things are going now. So the first thing that we had there was, of course, in 1986, just after the Watchmen movie, or the episode, what happened in the comics. So Adrian Veidt disappeared. Lady Trieu bought his company, and she is a trillionaire, of course. And if you take a look at Lady Trieu, it's her name is actually the Vietnamese Joan of Arc, is what it is, a real person. And so that name was taken from. So it's not a surprise here. So Osmandius, of course, is taken from history as well. That name, it's not a far cry to know that Lady Trieu is his clone. It basically his creation is what this is. And yes, I saw the coming attractions. I did. So we know that she is his creation. If you look at Lady Trieu, the way it's spelled, Trieu, and you put Veidt next to it, it's a mirror image almost, but with a couple of different letters. And of course, it looks almost the same. So essentially, she is his creation who has taken over. She is a plan B in case something happened to him, is what this is. Because we also saw that he is making, he's harvesting clones, and he has already said to the clones that they are not his creation. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the flaws that they have in them. So that is where we're going with that. He is also trapped someplace, probably. So they're going to say it's probably Dr. Manhattan that put him there. But why would Dr. Manhattan put him there? He didn't really give a shit about humans at that point. He left Earth. He left the galaxy essentially to go create life someplace else. But in this fanfic, what we're doing is we're saying he's still on Mars, supposedly, and that's where he's living. Maybe he trapped Veidt on the moon in this fanfic. We don't know for sure. So that is where we could be going with that. And so, of course, he needs to escape his confinement and make it back to Earth. Does that mean that... yeah, throwing the baby clones back in the water just wasn't right. It was weird. Yeah. But they weren't done yet. That's why. So where are we going with all of this? Your guess is as good as mine. Again, it's the mystery box. So when they started going back to this story about Judd and everything, that's when it starts getting bogged down. I'm liking the new Lady Trieu edition, just because it's weird. I don't know where it's going at this point. No one does at this point. I don't even think the writers know where they're going with this. Supposedly, this whole first season has a beginning, middle, and end that it wraps up, and it's only set for one season. Is what they have this storyline supposedly. We'll see. But right now, it's not making any sense, quite honestly. So, am I liking it? No, it's there. It's sci-fi, I guess you could say, but it's not really. It's keeping secrets from people, is what it is. And they're doing it intentionally. They're also playing with time. We don't know if Veidt is actually taking place. His stuff is taking place in the time that the main story is supposed to be taking place. We already saw the time jump back to 1986 with Lady Trieu buying the place, the house, and there might be some other time jumps as well. HBO has done this before with Westworld. Westworld has used those time jumps. So I might say either well or not so well. Whereas this one is not so apparent about its time jumps. Then again, this is episode 4. So who knows? And yes, I saw the coming attractions pen, and thank you. This is a nice shirt. I like this. This is my Comic-Con shirt that I got. Yeah. Yeah. The cast wasn't the issue for me. It was the direction of the story. I agree with you, Ed. The direction of the story, I don't really feel there is a direction, to tell you the truth. And I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off at me about this, saying that, well, you just don't understand the story, or you're just not getting it, or no, it's some bad writing, quite honestly. The whole dildo from the last episode was actually a joke one of the writers threw out there, and Lindelof said, "Let's go with it. I'm going to put it in." And if that tells you any indication of how this stuff is going, yeah. And that's kind of what throws me off on this whole thing. So yeah, I look at it. There was literally something that DC Comics was going to do that was going to be called Watchmen Babies back in the 90s, I want to say. I think it was the 90s. And luckily it didn't happen, but this happened instead. And there you go. Yes, Watchmen Babies. That's kind of what I like in this too. This is, like I said, this is fanfic. This is somebody who really liked Watchmen as a kid, and he read it when he was 13, 14. He's around the same age I am. So I know Lindelof read it around the same time I did. And he's doing his own version of it. It would be like me taking Camelot 3000 and doing a fanfic of that, even though no one's ever done that as a live action movie, and having the studio backing behind me as well with the money and everything. So, yeah. Sorry, I keep looking up because I see Mr. Robot on the screen there. It flashed up for a second. And I'm looking forward to that, quite honestly. So, it's not a hate on this. It's not a like on this either. It's just kind of a there kind of thing. I'm going to watch it through to the end to see where this thing goes or if it goes anywhere. It could crash and burn, which that's kind of where my money's on right now, is that it's going to crash and burn. And then whatever happens, I'm fairly sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to make excuses for it either way, is what's going to happen. And we'll see where it goes on this point at this point. So if you like what you see here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, like, share, and subscribe. You can also hit the bell down below, but again, it's a 50-50 chance of YouTube actually notifying you about when I'm going to be on. If you really want to see when I'm be on, go take a look at suspendedfanimation.com. That has my schedule up. It's also mirrored on my Facebook page. There's a Facebook group page where you guys can actually post stuff and talk amongst yourselves. I also have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, and I have a Patreon page, but I don't have a tier set up as of yet. I will by the end of this year, beginning of next year. There we go. And yes, Penn has put all the links up above in the comments there. And yes, I'm liking Gene Smart in this as well. Also, the actor who plays Looking Glass, I can't remember his name now. Everything he's been in, I love him in. So, excuse me, I didn't mean to spit water out at you guys as I was doing that, but yeah, that's what happens. Spit take. So up next at 9:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is going to be Mr. Robot. Again, because the People's Choice Award fucked everything up and put it on 2 hours early. So I didn't realize it until I was setting everything up, and I'm popping it on the East Coast feed, and I see it was already halfway through. And I was like, what the fuck? And I had to scramble a little bit. But I've got everything set up, so that should be good and ready to go. Yeah. Yes, he was in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is an awesome Coen Brothers movie. Yeah, it is a movie. It's a Netflix movie that the Coen Brothers did. Yeah, if you haven't seen The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, go and watch it on Netflix. One of the nicer things out there. It's so ridiculous, but also just funny as well. It's a bunch of anthology stories strung together in a Coen Brothers fashion, and in the Old West too. There we go. So again, thank you everyone who joined me tonight in the chat. Thank you if you made it this far in the video. If you've got nothing nice to say in the comment section, just don't leave anything. I don't care if you're putting down a dislike or not at this point. It is what it is. We have a difference of opinion on this show. I understand. And that's all well and good. But again, I look forward to all your comments as well. Some people actually bring some really good comments up and ask me questions, and that's what I like to do. I like to answer them. I answer them as much as possible. So thank you, everybody. Come back again at 9:15 p.m. for Mr. Robot. It's not like you rag on it. Yeah, exactly, Pen. I try not to rag on it. I try to be fair about it, and I try to give an even keel on it. I don't try to go off in a different direction on it. But yeah, when I have to do homework in order to understand what's going on, because you're not putting that in the show, like I'm having to go in and read the PDpedia. There is a PDpedia, by the way, online for HBO. It's supposed to be Agent PD's notes that have extra stuff and extra footage in there. It's kind of dumb, quite honestly. Yeah, pedopedia. Exactly, Penn. It's stupid. It's a stupid name, quite honestly. I know it's after Agent PD, but it sounds like pedophilia. Is really what it sounds like. It's harder to catch you live, but I do watch most videos. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I know. With your hours and my hours, it's a little bit different. Yeah, I don't blame you, Penn. You don't need to check out the PD. PD. It just sounds wrong to say two at the same time. It really does. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna go watch Mr. Robot, and I'll be back at 9:15. I'm also gonna set up here too and get ready for that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for you guys that joined me tonight in the chat. Thank you for everyone who watched me in the video. I will see you in a little bit. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, you may find out that someone snuck a giant dildo into your script on a dare just because they thought they could. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.